Good morning. So today I'm just going to say a little bit about, a question that comes up from time to time for me and maybe for you too, which is why did the Buddha emphasize dukkha? Why does dukkha come up so frequently in Buddhism? It's one of the first things that we learn about when we come across Buddhism. Dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, or even suffering. One of the three lakshanas. Why was it that the Buddha didn't emphasize happiness, how to be happy, and tell us how to go about that? Well, I think part of the answer to that is that fundamentally we need to understand why we suffer, and we need to face the fact and the truth of what it means to be a human being and why it is that we suffer. So, as I'm often saying, there's lots of reasons that we suffer, and some of those are inevitable by having a human body. So we know all that about old age, sickness, and death that we can't avoid, and they inherently have painful feelings, emotions associated with them. But it isn't inevitable that we suffer. I mean, we're going to suffer physically if we've got a physical body. We're going to feel pain, as it were. That doesn't necessarily mean that our mind has to suffer as well. So the Buddha saw that unless we penetrate deeply into the reality of the pain that we cause ourselves and cause others, and the pain that we give the world, unless we understand that, we're not really going to be motivated to leave suffering behind, to escape from suffering, to go for refuge to anything else. And so he taught the three lakshanas, that all things, everything conditioned is marked by those three characteristics of existence: dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, suffering, impermanence, and no fixed self, no enduring, no essence to ourselves. So yes, suffering is something that we have to penetrate very deeply, not just know it at a superficial level, but to understand how we escape, how we try to escape from suffering all the time, and that it's the trying to escape that creates the mental suffering. So let's take, for example, a physical suffering to start with. Okay, so maybe you have a pain in your body somewhere and you don't want it, you don't want that pain. So all sorts of things come up in your mind, maybe resentment, maybe things you're not able to do because you've got that pain or that illness. So you start focusing on all the things that you are being prevented from doing, getting on with your life because of this pain. And also, perhaps you fear that that pain is going to get worse and worse. And then what will you do? It's getting to be unmanageable. And maybe you even struggle on and you don't really relax and let go and think, okay, I've got this pain, I need to rest, or I need to go to bed, or I need to lie down. So what's happening there is you're fighting the pain that you're having. And that fight makes it infinitely worse. You are fighting the reality of what's happening. So in a way, you're trying to ignore it rather than meeting it, rather than going into it, rather than being with it. You're fighting it. So that reminds me, it's a bit like if you've got, let's say you've got a whinging child with you, and it's really annoying. This child is going on and it wants things and it doesn't want things. And because you don't want to be there with that child, you're getting in a really bad mood. That's one way of approaching it. But another way of approaching that child is to really be with them. Suddenly you decide, look, I can't ignore it. I can't change it. So I'm just going to engage with this child. And so maybe you put aside what you want to do and you start playing with the child. You engage in their game, which is what they wanted. They wanted you to build some Lego with them or something. And you do that, and suddenly you realise that everything has lifted. You're enjoying yourself. They're not whinging anymore. And it's very similar, I think, with pain. You have to engage with it. You have to relax as much as you can and turn towards whatever that physical pain is. And it does change it. It makes it can make it less intense. It can kind of spread it out. It can allow it to to let go a bit. It doesn't have to scream at you then for attention. So pain that's ignored, I think, tends to scream at you, saying, look at me, notice me. And all the time you're resisting it, saying, I don't want to know you, I don't want to be there. But if you can let go of that and right, these are sensations. What is the sensation? It's getting very intense now. It's stabbing now. Where is that stabbing? You explore it. It won't make it any worse. And the chances are it'll make it easier to bear. It might not go away, but it'll make you become more interested. That interest in it will help. That we give attention to. We become engaged with. We become involved with more. That might sound really strange because I'm not saying just become preoccupied with pain. But as long as you're ignoring it, as long as you're turning your back on it, it's going to call for more attention. So that's just physical pain. But the pain that we cause ourselves mostly is, as you know, because of our likes and our dislikes, our wants and our don't wants. So the way that we swing about in our states of mind is due to refusing in a way to have a sense of equanimity, have a sense of relaxing into how things are. So I think the Buddha was, that was such a skillful means of him to know that in a way, as long as we were pushing away suffering, as long as we weren't seeing the cause of suffering, the way that we're grasping at the world and at things, we weren't really going to get anywhere. We've got to have something that we see so clearly that we want to turn away from it. It's like, now I see suffering. Now I really want to leave suffering. I don't want to be in this suffering. So now what did the Buddha say about how we get out of suffering? How we leave suffering behind? And that huge first step is knowing suffering at all its levels, really, really knowing it. And I'm still discovering all the different ways that I create suffering for myself. And I still have eye-opening moments, like, so that creates suffering as well. That creates suffering. So now it's like it quite excites me when I find something like that, because it just means that my awareness is growing and that I'm seeing ways that I'm behaving, habits I've got, that if I can give those up, I'm going to reduce my suffering. So that's all I've got time for today. See you again.